my voice is stretched a little far tonight, so I don't know how long it'll last. Because we're blessed to be here. We've been kind of on the road the last few months. I think we haven't been on our home church on a Sunday at least since Labor Day. So we've been traveling quite a bit, and that's good part is in ministry and preaching and things. So you pray for us. Now, I told some of y'all I'd share, excuse me, to work a little bit tonight on what we do. My name is Ricky Boyle, and they call me the mechanics director, but I'm just a mechanic of Macedonian Missionary Service. We work through Macedonian Missionary Service. We all are, I don't know what the correct word is, independent contractors. I guess I'm not sure today. Well, we raise our own support, but we work through Macedonian Missionary Service. And in the mechanics ministry, it's something the Lord laid on people's hearts several years ago, and I didn't know it at that time, but I'll share a little bit of that with you in a minute. But what we do is we have a shop in Ackworth. We're in Ackworth, Georgia, north of Atlanta. We have another one now in Nancy, Kentucky, just around the Somerset area. We have two shops that the Lord has blessed us with. We pay no rent on either one of those buildings. They're both free and clear. The one at our house, and then the one that we use in Kentucky, a farmer that has a big building felt led to let us use that and gave us a big section to use, so we're blessed to do that, so that aspect of it. But what we do is our goal is to help missionaries in any way, mission churches, pastors, staff members, churches in any way that are in ministry. And how we do that is we just facilitate repairs on their vehicles, however we can do that. Sometimes that means getting them to the shop, which is really the best way for us now because we have all our equipment there. It's kind of hard to travel with all the equipment you need to work on vehicles and equipment now. But we have traveled. We travel out of the country, and we've worked on everything from fence gates to vehicles. Of course, we've had to repair transmissions and make bushes out of garden hoses. And so when you're on the foreign field, it's a little bit of a challenge, but it's rewarding to do that. So we do that by the missionaries can come by the shop, or we'll go to them often sometimes if that's available to us to go to them, and we'll make the repairs on their vehicles. It doesn't cost them anything. We of course ask them to buy the parts if they're able. If they're not able, we try to help out where we can. We have some people we can raise funds for at some times, but most of the time it's just them buying the parts for their vehicles at our cost, which sometimes we beg, borrow, and whatever with the parts houses, and they're pretty good about cooperating with us on things. So we want to keep the missionaries on the road, and as you know, as missionaries have come through here, and as they travel around, on deputation especially, they wear out some vehicles, and so we're able to help them out by keeping them going on the repairs. And so far this year, I think we've delivered 6 to 8 vehicles into missionaries' hands. And how that's worked is a couple of them have been vans that people have donated to us, mostly churches that aren't using them no more. We take them and we don't just turn them over to the missionaries. We'll completely pretty much rebuild them. We'll go through the brake system, suspension system, the running gear, anything that we possibly can. Go ahead and replace that so that they don't have a problem. Most of the time they get new tires and shocks and sometimes windshields and whatever. The latest van that we just delivered, we drove it to Maine actually. Drove all the way up to Maine, and we had a good time driving it. Lisa was able to go with us, and it's enjoyable when she's able to go with us, which isn't always the case. But that van was an older '92 Dodge, and really it was kind of a neat story. When we first got it, the motor was blown up, and then we found out the transmission was bad. So those are 2 major deals. It took a lot of money to raise to fix that. And in addition to that, it got pretty much, I like to tease people and say we pretty much like to lift up the radiator cap and drive a new vehicle under it with parts, but we had to replace the radiator cap even on this one, along with windshield wipers and everything. So we pretty much replaced it. It was a little worried because it was an older van, probably not the prettiest van. Now the inside was perfect, but didn't have carpet in it. So we drove it to Maine, and we figured out real quick. I had been to Maine several times, but I kind of forgot how bad the roads are up there. We complain about our roads here, but when you're driving along a New York, upstate New York thruway, that you're paid to be on a toll road, and it tells you to slow down to 30 miles an hour because the road is dangerously bad, bumpy. So you know that. But anyway, this van had a great suspension on it. Turned out to be the perfect vehicle the Lord had for them, and they really enjoyed it. It fits their needs. Some other ones that we've delivered this year were West Virginia Some other things we've been able to do, we had a young couple that surrendered to the ministry. And of course, they were going on deputation for a year, year and a half, however long it takes. And they had a van, because I think they have 3 or 4 children. So they were paying them about $500 or $600, which a lot of times, that's just necessity to have a van like that. Well, we had a little minivan donated to us that was in great shape and low mileage. So we kind of horse traded with them. They were able to sell their van, and we put them in that thing for deputation. So that's a big deal to a missionary who's traveling around, $500 a month plus a good vehicle. And we've traded vehicles with missionaries that were wore out. Some we have donated, we repaired, but that's kind of how the ministry works. And you just pray for us as we continue. It takes some funds to raise for these van projects. The latest one we have going on is going to be driven to Mexico, and this will be the second one we've driven to Mexico. Not the easiest trip, because you know how the things are going on in Mexico, so we just pray for us when we go. I'm not sure when that one will be delivered. It's in the process of actually being painted. We usually don't paint them. We kind of leave them the way they are, but this one, out of necessity, need to be painted and all too. But we're going to be tonight in John chapter 4, if you have your Bible with you, and I'll speak to you a little bit. But I told you this morning, excuse me, I'll tell you a little bit more about my testimony as you're standing there. I love to hear people's testimony. I hope you all do too. It's always neat to hear what the Lord's doing in people. I grew up Catholic. Went to Catholic school for a short time until I got thrown out. How you get thrown out of Catholic school in first grade? Well, I can tell you how, but I did. So that's kind of, grew up in a military family. We moved around a lot, lived on base, and if you ever know anything about that, you have to kind of be tough. If your dad's one of the officers or something, you have to be tough because they're going to try you. So grew up in kind of a tough environment and that. Nothing bad, as far as drugs or anything like that. Just grew up. It's hard to look at me and say, I just like to fight. And that, before all this stuff was popular, the MMA fight and all that stuff, that's kind of what we did back then behind me. But that's kind of how I grew up. Came to know my wife. We got married, and I'll just kind of shorten it. She, knew the Lord was dealing with me a little bit. But she'd take my children. She was a spiritual leader. So she took my children to church. And she grew up Baptist and all. And I just told her I didn't want to go with her. I'd stay home and do things, and she took our children. She said, I'm going to take our children to church, which was fine with me. Wasn't going to church anymore at the time. She kept inviting me, and one day I did go in with her to a Baptist church around where we lived there, and sat during the message, but kept to go to Sunday school. So the Sunday school is real important to me. I think it's just a neat thing, because the Sunday school to me was, I could actually ask questions where I could never do that before. And I wish I could run into that young man that taught Sunday school, him and his wife, again, but I'll always remember him because I made him work for his money. The Sunday school teacher, I guess, is the best I can say. I come up with questions, and it's always, when we teach sometimes or speak to people, we say, you remember the story about Noah, and you remember the story about the walls of Jericho and thing? Well, I just stop them and say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So it kind of get them off, so we just automatically sometimes think people know that. It wasn't long after that, we had a good friend of ours that was our son's baseball coach, Coach Sammy, and he started witnessing me to a little bit, and I didn't really know what he was, he started talking about me, and then our youngest son, was going to church and asking questions that I couldn't answer. So we had to have another friend of the family answer them. And during that process, the Lord was working on myself also. Brother Sammy passed over. He had a terrible accident. Was in his 40s maybe at the time. Was an electrician, fell off a ladder, just a freak accident, and died instantly on a concrete floor. It wasn't just like a 4-foot ladder. It wasn't a very high ladder. But during that process, in his funeral, and a few weeks later, through his witnessing to me and other people, my youngest son and myself both during a Christmas cantata. So don't ever think these little programs we have are worthless. During Christmas cantata, we were saved and baptized the next night. So that's kind of my story as far as that goes. But then to move on just a little bit, for years I was the head of missions at our church and did things like that. And during a missions conference, about 7 or 8 years ago, I felt the Lord leading me onto something else to do. And really, in my mind, I thought that was going to be to help missionaries that we had. We had about 7 out of our church in Hillcrest to help them raise funds and stay on the mission field. So we went to the altar and prayed, and for a year, we asked a couple other friends, close friends of ours, to pray about it. went back the next year, Missions Conference came up, and as Lisa, I think, mentioned to some of y'all, I'm a little hard-headed sometimes, and I said, Lord, you're just going to have to get my attention because I'm just not getting it. And so 3 days later, Brant Lane called me and said, listen, brother, and I had known Brant for a long time, and Leon and the rest of them, so we've been praying about this, and we want to start a mechanics ministry. Well, you know, yes, God that hits you in the face sometimes, he does. I never thought that the talents that the Lord gives you, but everybody has something the Lord can use, and I don't care what it is, and you know, everybody has that talent. That he prepared me for 38 years. I worked at the same place for 38 years as a master technician, a trainer, and carried many other titles, but never in my mind until that moment that I think that's how the Lord could use me in there. So and then a few years later, I told Lisa, I said, I think the Lord's calling me to preach. She said, well, I've been that for a long time. So, I mean, as she shared, she said, the Lord prepares the wife too. And then when I came forward to our church and surrendered to do that about 4 years ago, it's kind of neat how the Lord works all that out. All the people that were there said, well, we've known it for a long time too. I'm like, well, why didn't somebody let me know on it? I guess, but I knew it. But Rachel's dad, Steve Merritt, had called me probably about a year before that and asked me to come to do one of their mission things. And he said, you can share the mission work and you go ahead and preach. I said, I don't do that. I don't do that, brother. He said, well, you're a deacon though. You can talk, whatever. I said, I don't preach though. I was convicted of being convicted about it then. The very next day, I called him back and said, brother, I'll do it. I said, the Lord just won't let me alone. We didn't know each other real well at the time, but that's how our friendship started. But this is kind of neat how the Lord works it out. I preached my first sermon like a year later. Steve and Laurel had never been to our church. They were happened to be passing through on a Sunday night. Is the night I preached my first sermon. So as the Lord brings that together and confirms it, it's always pretty neat to do that. But our text tonight, for just a few minutes here, John chapter 4. We'll start in verse 30. This is always a neat story. And just to set a little background here, the story about Jesus going through Samaria. Instead of going around it, his disciples thought he should go around it, and nobody really went through Samaria at that time. But he knew he had to go there to meet up. He had an appointment, an opportunity with a woman at the well. And as he met the woman at the well, and the story goes on, she was saved and went back and told the people about this man. We'll pick up in verse 30 here. She had just said, and then went out of the city and came unto him. And the while the disciples prayed him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that ye know not of. Therefore said the disciples one to another, Hath any man brought him aught to eat? Jesus said unto them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. And he that reapeth receiveth wages, and gathereth fruit unto life eternal, that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. And herein is that say true, one soweth and another reapeth. I send you to reap about whereon you bestow no labor. Other man labored, and ye are entered into their labor. Just pray. Lord, I thank you again for the opportunity just to stand before these people tonight. Lord, I'm thankful to be here, thankful for this church and this mission and what it represents and all the hard work that goes in for each one of these people, Lord, as they become a light in this community, a growing community, Lord. And Lord, many in it, I'm sure, need your saving grace, Lord. But I thank you for being here tonight, Lord. Lord, I just pray for the Holy Spirit to indwell this place in this short time we have together. Lord, it's been a blessing to be with each one of us, Lord. Just ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Opportunity. We talked a little bit about commitment this morning. I want to talk to you a little bit, just for a few minutes, about opportunity tonight. See, every day, I believe this, every day, ordinary opportunities present themselves to us. We might think of it as ordinary appointments or going about our day as we go about, but a lot of these circumstances, we think back on probably saying, well, I missed an opportunity to, not just to share Jesus with somebody, but just to do good in their lives. A lot of times that's just what people need, you to do a little bit something good for them and show a little bit of Christian love. You know, work sometimes, I think over the 38 years that I worked at the place and worked with many different people, sometimes in the stress and environment of the work, it's hard to be Christian-like sometimes, to be a Jesus follower, and it's hard. But I started realizing, probably a little later than I should have, the last few years, they kind of knew I was winding down my time with them at the place I worked, and I was pretty much, the last 5 years, I could pretty much do as I pleased. I mean, I didn't take that opportunity not to work, but I could come and go pretty much as I pleased and things like that. But I realized that I took more advantage of opportunities then with young men to share, not just young men, but older men alike, to share the gospel with them and just to share with them in many ways. I wouldn't be part of the just colorful jokes and the things like that, and I shut them down pretty quick, and they knew that I wouldn't allow it. And we can be like that too. It's just sometimes doing little things like that to opportunities, because you know what I noticed? When you take advantage of those opportunities, when something hard or struggle comes in their lives, you're the first one they go to, even though you didn't think you had any type of relationship with them. When you show a little bit of that Christian love to them, you're the first one. With relatives, certainly there's always opportunities. I like to stand here before you and say that all my brothers and sisters and mom and dad and stepmom and all them, they're all saved, but they're not. They're not. I mean, it's hard as a man that preaches the gospel, and as much as I've preached to them, and you know, sometimes I want to give up explaining that to them and trying to witness to them, but don't. Especially with relatives, sometimes the hardest ones. But the Lord presents opportunities. I know that, you know, we used to not, they always ask me to pray, and they call me when something's wrong, and they come to hear me preach. So those opportunities with families and relatives are good. In your neighborhood, man, there's always those opportunities. We don't live in, per se, a subdivision, but just when you're out and about in the neighborhood, there's always time to be a witness for the Lord, the opportunity that He puts before you, whether that's a clerk at the grocery store or some, wherever you go and do business of any kind. You know, what about when you travel? I know probably many of y'all travel, and I do something a little funny that Lisa, it drives her crazy. If we happen to be on an airline, I always book the window seat and the aisle seat and not the middle seat when the two of us travel together. And she says, why are you doing that? I'm like, well, because really it kind of gives us you kind of have a captive audience on an airplane. I mean, they might not like it, they might get up and move, but every plane I've been on pretty much lately has been full almost. So, but you get a chance to share a little bit. And a lot of these trips we're coming back from, mission trips, so we get to share, and they're interested to hear whether it's a foreign country or whatever. But I do that, and I say, put somebody between both of us, usually. But usually that isn't how it works out. And I'll admit that it's kind of a selfish reason, because sometimes if the plane isn't booked, that's the last seat to book, and we get a whole row by ourselves. And sometimes it's pretty nice. But that person that usually sits there, I'll say, you know, I'll gladly move over because I sit next to my wife. And that always opens up a conversation, at least. They know you're not out to get them. So that's always just a little, as we travel. When we travel, we run into people. So I'll always do that. Like I said, she doesn't much care for it, but it's never really backfired on us yet, I don't think. So nobody's insisted on sitting in the middle seat. So that's always good. But see, in the verses we read in verse 32, you notice Jesus said, He said, I have meat to eat that you not know of. You know, the disciples here had gone off to get him something to eat, and they thought, well, somebody brought him something to eat. But Jesus was saying, wasn't talking about literal food, and but they thought that's what he was talking about, wonder where he got it. See, doing the Father's will is what he was talking about at this time. The will of God ought to be the source of strength and satisfaction to each one of us. To do the will of God, to take advantage of those opportunities that He gives us each day. See, and I thought about this, and I started thinking, and I've been guilty of this, is if what we're doing tears us or other people down or isn't good for us, it's not the will of the Lord, I can guarantee you that. If the situation, whether it's talking about something, instead of building someone up, maybe we're tearing them a little bit down, maybe with our gossip, maybe with the things we're doing, maybe not showing them the Christian love, we might want to question if it's the will of the Lord. And people ask all the time, and for some reason I like to ask missionaries and preachers, how do I know what the will of the Lord is for me? Well, I can't really answer that for you, but you better pray about it and just, one piece of advice that was given to me, if you think you're called to preach, if you think you're called to do something in the church, even as little as teaching a Sunday school class, and that's not a little job, or doing whatever it is, try not doing it and see if the Lord leaves you alone. Try not doing it. If it's the will of the Lord, He won't leave you alone. There might come a day when He does, but He's not going to let up on it then. So the opportunity's there. See, our Lord never looked on the Father's will as a heavy burden or distasteful. If you never looked at it as a verse, Psalms 40:8 says, I delight to do thy will. Oh my God, thy law is within my heart. What a delight to do the Lord's will, which is the opportunities he gives us. You know, we must never look on an opportunity. We might think, excuse me, that opportunity and we talk to someone about the Lord or the church or invite them to church and it seems like it falls on deaf ears. But so we must not, that's an opportunity the Lord has given us to maybe plant a seed in somebody, maybe plant a seed to do good, but it's never a waste of time and energy. I know we measure success in this society, we measure our own success by the people that we see. See, that's not only witnessing though either. It's never, my grandfather used to tell me all the time, it's never wrong to do right, no matter what the situation. It never is. It's never wrong to do right. So if you're doing the right thing and a good thing, it's always good to do that. You know, have you ever had I don't know what I call them a Jesus moment. I hope you have, and I'll explain to you one of mine. I've had more of them in my life. We were on a trip to Brazil, and Lisa was with me at this time, and we were in the city and told not to go out of a certain area, much like probably Atlanta, Birmingham, I don't know, it was a diet. They told us definitely don't go out of this area. Well, if you know me, we kind of, not really on purpose, but kind of on purpose, we were with another couple wandered out of the area we weren't supposed to be in to just around the corner to a little bit of a rough area. And I remember, you know, we like to, I think, sometimes think of us as American Christians that we got it going on, and our life's okay. We went around the corner, and in the doorway was a man, I try not to be too graphic, but it just really is. He was laying up and obviously been drinking or on drugs, was a mess, had thrown up over himself, was piled up in the corner, passed out. I remember just standing there staring at him. Of course, Lisa and the other couple were kind of pulling me along. And when I turned around, I had tears coming down my eyes. And as I told you this morning, I've never been a man of tears, just never really have. The Lord softened my heart. And she said, what's wrong? And the other couple said, wrong. I said, you know, I just had a moment where the Lord was speaking to me saying, you know what, Ricky, I see that person through the same eyes I see you. Exactly the same. You're no better, brother. You're still a sinner saved by grace. They're the same. I think we can lose back to that sometimes when the Lord gives us opportunity. I like to tell you there was a great big ending where I got to witness the guy and got saved, but the fact was he was passed out, but the Lord used it as an opportunity to show me. Sometimes on these mission trips we don't really, or anything we do, we don't realize why they're there, but sometimes opportunities for the Lord to do something in our own lives. You know, we drove around Carson Island midday, and I've been to clear this area off and on several times in the last 15 years. I remember when I first came, it was to one of the Bassmasters Classic at Lay Lake, I believe it was. There wasn't nothing down there. There wasn't nothing this end of town, really, in Birmingham. So you have a unique opportunity here, I think, just kind of like we do in Ackworth. Around us where we live, it's just every piece of property around our home has been bought up in the last year to build subdivision. Literally, we used to be out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally, you know, way out. Now everything's been built up around us. To me, I'm not comfortable with it, but our church is only 2 miles from us too, and as I was sharing with our church, much like around here, that's opportunities when people move into your area. Certainly you're in a growing area here, so I just want to tell you to take advantage of those. And I know your Pastor Paul and his wife Amy, that they're good about getting y'all into doing that, but don't neglect the opportunities of the growth around you. Growth we think is a bad thing sometimes because with it brings traffic and problems and everything else that comes along with it. But take advantage of that. See, Galatians 6:10 says, as we therefore have opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are the household of faith. Sometimes we need to remember that just a little bit. We like to do good to other people and have the opportunity to share with people outside these walls, but it's important as a church family to do good to each other also, to build each other up. That's why we come to hear God's Word, is really to build each other up, to encourage one another, so that when we hit the doors out there, that's the mission field, and that's where the real work begins, when we show others about Christ. See, the Bible's full of opportunities, stories about opportunities that I thought about someday. Just Noah. Depending on who you look at, he preached for a lot of years. I'm not going to give you, it's anywhere between 50 and 100, depending on how you look at the scriptures. It doesn't really matter. He preached for a long time. But during that time, he gave those people opportunities to come onto the boat when the rain started. And when the rain started, it never rained at that time when it started. They had an opportunity right up to that time, and then the Lord closed the door at that time, and they were there. Sodom and Gomorrah, we know that story a little bit, that you know, an evil city, which you could probably pick out some cities around here, probably most of them, probably, I know you can around us, what you would consider evil. I'm talking about in the U.S., what we would consider evil, but they're all the same, even little towns. But the Lord told them and gave them opportunities to leave. And then he wiped them out, even though they didn't. What about the two thieves on the cross? I always think about that as opportunity. You know, one hung on one side of them, one hung on the other side, and one of them said, Lord, if you're who you say you are, get us down out of this place and let us go on. That's what one of them said. But the other one, the Lord told him what? You'll be with me in paradise today. The Lord took the opportunity, but the thief also took the opportunity too. Two drastic outcomes. Another one of my favorite stories, the Good Samaritan. That's always a story that we've got to take to heart. The people, you know, that the religious leaders came by, that Jesus tells about, and other people came by, and no one helped the man. We don't know the man's name, the Good Samaritan, but he took care of the man and made provisions for him moving on. But I want to look at it just a little bit here. I think it's verse 35. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then come the harvest. See, the disciples that asked him, you know, it's not time to harvest. It's another 4 months. But Jesus said, behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. Already to harvest. You know, the image of the harvest is one often used in the Bible about winning souls. And, you know, on the way over here, it happened again this time, we've been traveling, I told you all a lot, and we went to South Georgia, and I guess I'm sure they're destructed now from what, but Cottonville as far as you can see. Same thing coming over here in Alabama. They didn't get the destruction of the hurricane last week, so they're beautiful right now because they're white. They're white out there. And really, in the Bible, and Jesus talks about here, already when they're white and are into harvest, that means they're past time to harvest, really. But I think of those, and Elise and I were traveling years back in northern Alabama, and we got on a road that, I mean, as far as you can see in front of you, as far as you can see behind you and beside you, were just white cotton fields. It was beautiful. It was October, and I pulled over. And she said, what are you doing? I said, you know what? These verses came to me. I said, just think of each one of them white miles that you see out there as a soul. Really, as a soul. So every time I see cotton fields now, that's what I think of. That's the image I have. And those are all opportunities to share with them. But I said, Lisa, just imagine if those are all lost souls. And just imagine. I said, many of them we know. Many of them we know. I said, so opportunities, as the Lord gives you opportunities. So whenever I see cotton fields now, that's what I think of. I mean, that's just something the Lord has given me, and I'm glad He does, because it's always a reminder this time of year we're riding around and see those. There's opportunities to share the Lord with many people, many souls, many lost souls. I want to kind of leave you with this a little bit. Has anybody ever been on a cruise? We have, okay? I mean, years ago. The purpose of being on a cruise ship is that you have a small handful of people to wait on a bunch of people. That's their job on a cruise ship, is the cruise ship to make you happy, whether it's for food, entertainment, leaving you alone, getting you to the places you want to be. It's just a small amount of people, and you as the passengers just get to enjoy it. Well, see, unfortunately, I think a lot of our churches have become like cruise ships. We just got a handful of people sometimes doing all the work. And that's true in all churches, I can assure you. It's true. But sometimes, I challenge our church. I said, I want our church not to be a cruise ship. I want it to be a battleship. You know what happens on a battleship? Have you ever been on a battleship? Everybody has something to do. Everybody has something to do and contributes to that. And not just in the time of battle stations, but all during that, especially, though, in the time of battle stations. And we're in a battle. We're in a battle right now. We're in a war with Satan. Is an opportunity, but be a battleship. I want to encourage you as a church to be a battleship. Everyone has something to do. I don't care if you're on a battleship. You may be getting the captain coffee. You may be polishing the bullets and the mortars. I don't know what you're doing, but somebody does something, and there's always something in church for somebody to do. So be a battleship. I want to encourage you as a church to be a battleship. I want to leave you with this. Colossians 4:5 says, "Walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Redeem the time. Redeem the opportunities and the time that the Lord has put before you as an individual, as a church, set right here on this hill. I believe, I can't wait. I get excited every time I hear reports, talk to Brother Paul. I'm just waiting for this place to explode, and I feel like it will. You have a good passion, a good core group, and all. Continue on and make the most of the opportunities that the Lord gives you. Not just here around the church and during church activities, but as you go about your daily lives. Seize the opportunities. The fields are white unto harvest. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for being able to share your word just a little bit and share the ministry with these fine folks here. Lord, I pray for each one of them as they go out